Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a quiet American town, every morning seemed the same, the birds singing, the smell of warm bread in the bakeries, and the people greeting each other with smiles. Marguerite, the owner of a small neighborhood grocery store, knew all her customers by name and by their habits. Her store was a haven of calm and order, a place where everyone could feel at home. Yet a simple gesture would disrupt this routine. A child, his face marked by fatigue and hunger, quietly advanced down the aisles, his eyes avoiding those of the others. His hands trembled slightly as he took a packet of biscuits and slipped it into his jacket. This gesture, however small, triggered an invisible shockwave, a suspended moment where innocence and despair collided. Marguerite, witnessing this scene, could not imagine that this moment, a simple spark of injustice and need, would take her far beyond her small shop, towards a story of compassion, difficult choices and unexpected transformations. The morning sun streamed gently through the large windows of Marguerite's store, illuminating the rows of fresh fruit, the neatly aligned bottles of milk, and the shelves overflowing with breads and pastries. Every item seemed in perfect order, a reflection of Marguerite's meticulous personality. For over 15 years, she had known every corner of her shop and every customer, and she loved the routine. That day, however, something disturbed her calm. Between the aisles of biscuits and sweets, a swift movement caught her attention. A boy, perhaps 10 years old, was creeping forward, his eyes worried, his hands trembling. Marguerite vaguely recognized him as a neighborhood child, but she had never had reason to worry about him. Before she could react, the boy slipped a packet of biscuits into his jacket. Marguerite felt her heart sink. Disbelief gave way to a mixture of anger and fear. How could a child steal like that, here, from her sanctuary of trust and respect? She walked towards him, trying to keep her voice calm but firm. "Hey! What are you doing, kid?" The boy jumped, dropping the packet of biscuits. His eyes were wide, filled with fear and shame. Marguerite felt a strange lump form in her throat. This wasn't just a theft. It was a silent cry, a plea muted by poverty and distress. She knelt down to be at his eye level, seeking eye contact. "Why did you take this without asking?" she asked softly, but authoritatively. The boy looked away, unable to answer. After a long moment of silence, he whispered almost inaudibly. "I'm hungry. I have nothing to eat at home." Marguerite's initial shock gave way to deep compassion. This small gesture was not an act of malice, but of survival. She gently reached out her hand. "Listen, stealing is never the answer. But I can help you." The boy hesitated, his face lowered, as if expecting punishment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Marguerite gave him a sandwich and a fruit juice, all the while speaking to him about respect, honesty, and above all, dignity. She understood that a simple gesture could transform this moment of fear and shame into a life lesson and a spark of hope. After the boy finished his sandwich, Marguerite invited him to sit on a small bench near the store entrance. He nervously played with his hands, avoiding her gaze. Marguerite knew she had to tread lightly. Fear and shame could paralyze a child, and this boy seemed to be carrying an invisible weight far greater than his age. "You know, anyone can ask for help. You don't have to be ashamed to say you're hungry," she said softly, her eyes filled with understanding. The boy remained silent for a few moments, then finally whispered. "My mom, she works a lot. And my dad, he's not here anymore." Marguerite felt her heart clench. She knew this pain, this absence that left an immense void. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "And you have no one to help you when you are hungry?" He nodded slowly, his eyes moist. Marguerite realized then that this act of stealing was not a mere whim, but a direct consequence of the precariousness in which he lived. The boy's distress went far beyond the simple theft of a packet of biscuits. "Listen, I can offer you something," Marguerite said, getting up to go behind the counter. She took a notebook and pencil and jotted down some information about a local association that helped families in difficulty. "I'll help you contact these people." And if you want, you can come back here from time to time. Not to steal, but to learn, read, or even help out a little in exchange for food. The boy finally looked up at her, a mixture of suspicion and hope in his eyes. Really, you do that for me? He asked timidly. Marguerite smiled sweetly. Of course. But you have to promise me you'll try asking for help before taking anything. Understand? He nodded, this time with determination. For the first time in a long time, a shy smile appeared on his lips. This small moment, simple but charged with emotion, marked the beginning of an unexpected bond between the caring adult and the distressed child. Marguerite knew this encounter would change something, not only for the boy, but for herself. She had always believed in helping her customers by offering them products and services. Today, she understood that true help could touch hearts and transform lives. In the following days, the boy, whose name Marguerite had learned Ethan, began returning to the store regularly. Not to steal this time, but to spend time, listen to Marguerite tell stories, and sometimes help stock the shelves or clean the floor. At first, Ethan remained silent, observing everything cautiously, as if he feared being rejected at any moment. Marguerite, with her patience and gentleness, showed him that her store could be a refuge. She taught him how to count change, classify products, and even make small gestures of politeness toward customers. Every smile exchanged was a victory, every honest gesture a step toward trust. One afternoon, while Marguerite was arranging fruit, she saw Ethan freeze in front of an old framed photograph on the wall. It was a picture of Marguerite with her own mother, holding a basket of fruit at a food drive for needy families. Was that your mom? Ethan asked timidly. Yes, Marguerite replied, her voice filled with nostalgia. She taught me to always reach out to those in need. Even if you're sometimes surprised or scared, you have to try to help. Ethan looked down. I never had this at home. No one ever taught me to ask for help. Marguerite felt her heart clench again. She understood that Ethan's road would be long, but that with support and kindness, he could learn to feel worthy and secure. She extended her hand to him. Then you can learn here. You can learn to be honest, courageous, and kind. As the weeks passed, Ethan began to smile more. He became a little assistant at the store, helping Marguerite prepare customer orders and package products. The locals began to notice him, surprised by his politeness and seriousness. Ethan, who just a few weeks earlier had been a fearful and desperate boy, was beginning to regain his confidence. But Marguerite knew this fragile progress could be tested at any moment. Ethan's life outside the store remained uncertain, and the challenges he faced at home were still invisible to her. This budding, hopeful bond would soon be tested by an unforeseen situation that would test the boy's confidence and courage. A few weeks later, while Ethan was helping Marguerite stack boxes of fruit near the entrance, the sound of an argument coming from the street caught their attention. Two adults were having a violent argument on the sidewalk, and Marguerite quickly recognized the voice of the owner of the small apartment where Ethan lived with his mother. She felt an unusual tension, a concern she'd never felt before for a client. Ethan, noticing her anxiety, clenched his fists and bowed his head. Marguerite approached him and whispered, "Stay here. Don't move." She went outside to observe more closely. The argument was escalating quickly, and Marguerite heard harsh words about the lack of money, the unpaid bills, and the persistent hunger that had haunted Ethan for weeks. Marguerite's heart sank. She understood that if nothing was done, the boy could be brought back into an environment where his fragile progress at the store would be wiped out. She went back inside, determined to protect the refuge they had built together. "Ethan," she said softly, "I'm going to take care of you. Not just for today, but to keep you safe and fed." The boy looked at her incredulously. You would do that for me?" Marguerite nodded. "Yes. But you have to understand, there will be difficult times. Life isn't always fair, but as long as you do your best, you'll find people to help you." She knew she couldn't solve all of Ethan's problems alone, but she already had an idea: contact the local association she had noted in her notebook, explain the situation, and find a lasting solution so Ethan could eat, study, and feel safe. That day, Ethan realized that Marguerite wasn't just a kind shopkeeper. She had become a pillar in his life, a guide to a future he had never dared to imagine. And Marguerite, for her part, understood that sometimes the help we offer isn't just a gesture or a product, but can change the course of an entire life. That evening, after the store closed, Marguerite sat at her desk, her notebook open in front of her. Ethan's situation weighed heavily on her mind. She knew it wasn't enough to offer him a meal or temporary shelter. He needed a lasting plan, a stability he'd never known. She picked up her phone and contacted the local charity she had noted a few weeks earlier. After a long conversation with a compassionate social worker, she explained Ethan's situation, his family's poverty, hunger, and the difficulties he faced on a daily basis. The social worker promised to come to the home the next day to assess the situation and offer practical help. The next morning, Marguerite woke Ethan with a hot breakfast. "Something special is going to happen today," she told him with a reassuring smile. The boy, intrigued, followed her to the store. A few hours later, a young social worker arrived at the store. After speaking with Marguerite and Ethan, she proposed a support program that included free school meals, follow-up care for his mother, and access to educational and recreational activities. Ethan listened, his eyes shining with hope and surprise. For the first time, he felt that his life could truly change. Marguerite, proud but humble, looked at Ethan. "You see, sometimes all you have to do is ask for help and things will improve." The boy nodded with a shy but genuine smile. That day marked a turning point. The small refuge he had found at the store was no longer just a place to eat or hide, it was becoming an anchor for his future. But Marguerite also knew that this path would not be without obstacles. Life in the neighborhood was sometimes tough, and Ethan's family challenges hadn't gone away. She vowed to stay by his side, not just as a shopkeeper, but as a mentor, guide, and friend. As Ethan left the store that evening with a small bag full of groceries and a lighter heart, Marguerite felt a deep conviction: sometimes, a simple act of kindness can be the beginning of a transformation far greater than one might imagine. As the weeks passed, Ethan began to feel more and more comfortable in the store. The place, once simply a place to get a meal, had become a sanctuary for him, a space where he could be himself without fear or judgment. Marguerite noticed that the boy, once reserved and silent, was beginning to talk about his dreams and desires, shyly but with touching sincerity. One afternoon, while they were sorting fresh vegetables together, Ethan finally dared to break the silence. "Marguerite. I would like to become a cook one day." Marguerite looked at him with surprise and admiration. "A cook? And why?" Because I like to see people smile when they eat something good," he replied, his eyes shining. "I want to cook so that no one goes hungry, or so that mealtimes are a happy time, even for those who have little." Marguerite felt a warmth fill her heart. She remembered her own mother, who had taught her to nourish not only the bodies, but also the souls of the people around her. She gently placed her hand on Ethan's shoulder. "So, if that's what you want, we'll find a way to help you learn. You can start here, and I'll teach you what I know." Over the next few days, she introduced Ethan to small kitchen tasks, making sandwiches, slicing vegetables, baking simple pastries. Each gesture was accompanied by a lesson in patience, precision, and caring for others. Ethan absorbed everything like a sponge, marveling at the flavors, textures, and joy his actions brought to customers. Little by little, the store became not only a refuge for Ethan, but also a makeshift school where he could cultivate his talent and nurture his dream. Marguerite, for her part, felt a deep, silent pride. She had thought she was helping a child in distress, but she discovered that it was also teaching her the value of hope and resilience. However, the neighborhood remained unpredictable, and Marguerite knew that Ethan's path would be fraught with challenges. But this bond, this mutual trust, now represented a bright spot in their daily lives, the beginning of a future where hunger, fear, and loneliness could gradually give way to learning, joy, and renewed dignity. A week later, while the store was bustling with regular customers, a group of local teenagers suddenly entered. They looked defiant, and their gaze immediately fell on Ethan. Marguerite felt a familiar tension tighten in her chest. "Hey, you," one of the boys called out, approaching Ethan. "Looks like you're thinking you're someone else now, huh?" Ethan instinctively backed away, his eyes lowered. He'd encountered teasing before at school, but never in such a direct and intimidating way in this place where he finally felt safe. Marguerite intervened immediately. "Leave him alone," she said in a firm voice, sharp as a cleaver. The teenagers laughed, but one of them stepped closer. "Yeah, how about we take his cookies?" Ethan felt his heart race. He was scared, but he remembered Marguerite's words about courage and honesty. Slowly, he straightened, his gaze fixed on the intruders. "You're not going to intimidate me," he said, his voice weak but determined. Marguerite placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, stay calm. Don't respond with violence, but with dignity." To his surprise, the teenagers, seeing his determination and Marguerite's obvious support, backed away slightly. One of them whispered something in his friend's ear, and after a moment of heavy silence, they left the store laughing, but without causing any damage. Ethan, still shaking with fear, turned to Marguerite. "Thanks. I thought they were going to." Marguerite smiled at him gently. "I know, my boy. But you stood your ground without putting yourself in danger. That's true courage." This confrontation, though brief, marked a turning point for Ethan. He understood that confidence and self-respect could sometimes be enough to ward off those who would intimidate you. Marguerite, for her part, realized that her role went beyond culinary instruction or material protection. She also had to teach him how to stand up in the world, face difficulties, and defend his dignity. As calm returned to the store, Ethan felt a mixture of relief and pride. He knew this path would be fraught with challenges, but he was beginning to understand that, even in the face of fear and injustice, he could choose to remain strong, guided by Marguerite's support and wisdom. A few days after the incident with the teenagers, Marguerite decided it was time for Ethan to take the next step. She wanted to show him that he could not only learn, but also create and share something valuable. "Ethan, today you're going to prepare your first meal on your own," she announced, handing him a clean apron. The boy's eyes widened, both excited and nervous. "On your own? But, what if I mess up?" Marguerite placed a hand on his shoulder. "Listen, mistakes are part of learning. What matters is that you try and put your heart into it." She showed him how to chop vegetables, season them properly, and prepare a small fresh vegetable soup they usually sold in the store. Ethan followed each step with concentration, mentally repeating Marguerite's instructions. As he worked, a smile appeared on his face. He felt capable, proud, and useful. When he served the soup to the customers present that day, they were surprised by the quality of the dish and the attention to detail. Several customers congratulated Ethan, and Marguerite felt her heart fill with pride. After the service, she crouched down to his level. "See? It wasn't perfect, but it was you, and that means a lot more." Ethan nodded, his eyes shining. "Thank you, Marguerite. For everything, really." This moment marked a turning point in their relationship. Ethan no longer saw Marguerite only as a protector, but also as a mentor who believed in him, who enabled him to dream and surpass himself. Marguerite, for her part, understood that the trust she placed in him was reciprocal. She had opened a door, and Ethan began to walk confidently along the path to his future. But Marguerite knew their journey would not be without its challenges. The neighborhood, family difficulties, and the obstacles of daily life were always present. However, that day, she saw something precious shine in Ethan's eyes, self-confidence and the courage to make his dreams come true. A few weeks after Ethan prepared his first meal, life in the neighborhood held another challenge for him. One morning, on his way to school after helping Marguerite at the store, he again encountered the group of teenagers who had bullied him. This time, there were more of them and they seemed determined to make him pay for his newfound confidence and courageous attitude. "Hey, Ethan," one of them shouted, advancing on him. "You think you're a leader now? Let's see." Ethan felt his heart race. Fear, familiar but less paralyzing than before, rose within him. He remembered Marguerite's words, "Dignity and courage can protect you more than fear or violence." He straightened up, took a deep breath, and answered in a clear but calm voice. "I don't want any trouble. Leave me alone." The teenagers laughed and moved closer, but Ethan stood firm. At that moment, Marguerite, who had noticed the situation from the shop, rushed out. "Leave him," she called, her voice echoing through the street. The teenagers hesitated, surprised by Marguerite's authority and determination. Ethan felt a surge of gratitude and courage wash over him. He realized that even in the face of intimidation, he could stand his ground with dignity, especially with the support of someone who believed in him. The teenagers, after a tense moment, eventually backed away and walked away, whispering insults that could no longer reach him. Marguerite placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You were very brave, Ethan. I'm proud of you." The boy, still breathless, felt a new emotion, self-confidence. He had faced fear, and for the first time, he understood that his strength came not only from Marguerite, but from his own ability to remain true to his values and his dream. That day, Ethan realized that life would often test him, but that he could now face obstacles with courage and intelligence. And Marguerite knew that, despite the difficulties of the neighborhood and the challenges of his family life, the boy she had decided to help was slowly becoming a young man capable of transforming his weaknesses into strengths. A few months had passed since Ethan arrived at Marguerite's store. What began as a simple act of compassion, offering a meal to a hungry child, had turned into a journey of discovery, trust, and shared dreams. One Saturday morning, Marguerite had organized a small cooking demonstration in her store for regular customers. The goal was simple: to showcase Ethan's growing talent and boost his confidence. The boy, wearing a small apron he wore with pride, stood behind the counter, ready to prepare vegetable soup and some pastries he had learned to make. Intrigued, customers began arriving, curious to see this young man working with such seriousness and precision. Ethan, despite his initial nervousness, followed each step with concentration, applying everything Marguerite had taught him. As he served his dishes, the customers' smiles and compliments lit up his face. He understood then that his work could bring joy and recognition. Marguerite, watching the scene, felt an intense emotion wash over her. She remembered the day she had caught Ethan stealing cookies, that moment of fear and despair that now seemed so distant. She had thought she was helping a child in distress, but in reality, she had helped reveal an unsuspected talent and resilience. After the service, Ethan turned to Marguerite, his eyes shining with gratitude and pride. Thank you for never letting me down." Marguerite smiled and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, you've come this far. I've just been there to guide you. You've found the courage, the patience, and the passion within yourself." That day, Ethan realized that life could offer second chances and that sometimes a simple act of kindness could transform someone's destiny. The once shy and scared boy had grown into a confident young man, determined to follow his dream of cooking and sharing joy with those around him. As for Marguerite, she understood that true wealth lay not only in her store or her business, but in the lives she could touch, the hopes she could revive, and the talents she could help flourish. The neighborhood store, with its well-stocked shelves and warm atmosphere, was no longer just a place of commerce. It had become a home, a place of learning, courage, and transformation. And in that small, bright space, a simple but powerful lesson stood out: compassion and trust can change the world, one child at a time.